Dan Licht, Dexter just ended this past season, so did you have any particular goals for the final season or episode?
I really wanted to go out as strong as possible. That was my major goal, is to go out on a high note. So I put a lot of extra effort and time into it and just made sure that it was the best score that I could give.
So what were you trying to accomplish with your score for Dexter, like across all seasons?
The job of the composer is always to amplify what's happening in the story or clarify some things which are not clear. Like when, with screenwriters and actors, screenwriters, you can't write what somebody's thinking, and actors, they don't really have little thought bubbles that come up. So frequently, it's the music can kind of tell what they're thinking. It's So a lot of what my score is really about, Dexter's mood, helping clarify what he was feeling or being behind his voiceovers.
So some shows have music kind of throughout the episode to underscore action or that kind of thing, and some shows, have very specific themes that they employ over and over again. So how do you decide what kind of a show you're on when you're scoring it?
Well, that's not always my decision. I mean, I can lobby for what I consider to be the best approach for a show, but ultimately it comes down to the producers and the director, how much music's going to be in it. When I started Dexter, the first season, they wanted to keep it very sparse, and there's very little music in the first bunch of episodes, but that changed as it got more intense. And then as the seasons went on, there was more and more music being put into the show, but not as much as you might have in many shows. There's usually about 25 minutes of music in a 52-minute show, whereas some network shows you may have 48 minutes of music in a 50-minute show.
So you've also worked this past season on a new show, The Red Road, on Sundance. So how does that score differ from Dexter's?
It's a much more minimal approach. A lot of very light tension kind of textures, and Dexter is very kind of in-your-face kind of score generally. It's very bold. It has themes which are recognizable and are set pieces, and some people describe the music in Dexter as part of one of the characters. The Red Road is a much more ethereal and backgroundy kind of score. It's very light because the drama is very taut, and it's a kind of show that doesn't really need as much amplification as it does sort of like tension or mood.
I understand that you were brought in after they made the title theme for Dexter, or they had someone else make it, but did you do the one for The Red Road?
I did do the main title for The Red Road, yes.
Can you talk about that one?
Well, I was happy to be able to do that. I was really, I had really wanted. I was a little disappointed that the job, when I got hired on Dexter, the main title job had already been kind of like assigned. On Dexter, they had really wanted. They were going to go with do a kind of like a Ry Cooder, I think, or they wanted to go with a kind of a star kind of personality. And I guess that Rolf Kent, as great as he is the biggest star they could get. But I think Rolf did a great job, so I think kudos to him. Red Road, it's a 30-second main title, so I didn't have as much time to do a full-length kind of song, but I was grateful to have the chance to do more than a 4-second main title, which is what you get on some network TV shows.
So I've seen another interview where you say that everywhere you go, you're always knocking on things just to find out how they sound. So what are the weirdest instruments that they bring to the table?
I would say sawing a cow bone was kind of odd. I mean, I've done things like where I had my studio in one of the staircases. I went in there with a hammer, and I was banging on a metal railing in this big staircase. And at night, late at night, I brought my microphones in there, and I got some great samples out of that. But yeah, I think that's about the oddest thing. I put a frying pan on a guitar once. I used to do that when I performed and just sort of rocked a frying pan on an electric guitar, and it makes this just totally bizarre kind of otherworldly, crazy sound that you'd be amazed at how crazy it sounds. You put it right over the pickup, and it kind of like it changes the pitches in really odd ways. But I mean, whatever works.
So you've worked a lot in film and video games as well.
I mean, I've worked in 3 different forms. One is television, film, and video games. Television is probably the fastest delivery. I mean, you're on a show for a while. Like I was on Dexter for 8 years, but each episode I probably have a week or 2 to deliver from locked cut. With a film, you generally have about 2-3 months, depending on how early they hire you. And you sort of start developing your material, and then you start scoring, and then you deliver it all, and then you go to the mix, and you shake everybody's hand, and you hope to see them again. With a video game, this process can take 2 years. It has. I mean, for Dishonored, they contacted me. They just contacted me because they love the music from Dexter, and they said when they were pitching the actual video game, they said, "Can you write us a main title?" Which is very unusual. Generally, when they're doing what they call a slice, they don't hire a composer to write music. That was sort of and I did, and they ended up liking it and ended up using it in the game.
What would you recommend to someone who wants to have a career in film and television composing?
It's going to be directors that make or break your career in the long run. And talk to everybody you know. Don't be afraid to use, if you've got an uncle, a nephew, a cousin, whatever. Anyone you know in the business, don't, make sure you offer your help or services, or basically use whoever you know. You have to be very aggressive to make it in this business. Wallflowers, will not get hired. You really got to go out of your way and talk to people, and and write good music, write original music. The best advice I can do for any composer is come up with an original sound. Make sure that you have a sound that's distinctive and doesn't sound like everyone else, because that's what's going to get you hired. Somebody gets a film, they're going to have 10, 20, 100 composers they're going to listen to, and you need to stand out. You need to be right for their film, but you also need to stand out.
Okay, going off of that, how would you define your distinctive sound then?
I think it's developed over time to be kind of a little bit quirky and dark, but also using odd instruments in odd ways, and combinations of hammer dulcimers and celeste, and I like to put together fun groups of instruments. To me, that's fun. Like, let's throw this in. Like, lots of sound textures, but using synthesizers, but mixing in a lot of organic elements. It's always real important to me to have something in there live, unless it's truly an electronic score. But for me, it's fun to have some kind of singer, percussion, breath, whatever, something that comes from a human being. But I like to mix that in, like with any kind of electronics. I might put it through delays or add some synth pads to it. But to me, that's the best of both worlds, is to be able to, mix things up a little bit and not be real clear sometimes where sounds are coming from. People will say, "Oh, it sounds familiar," but there's something weird about that. Because I might add whistling to a violin sound, and they'll go, "Sounds like a violin, but I don't know." Like the Blood theme, nobody actually knows what that's played on. Everyone's asked me, what is that? Because nobody knows what it is. But it's just harmonics on a viola, and I've added just a little bit of a synth sound behind it, and so it's familiar and unfamiliar at the same time.
What projects do you have coming up next?
We're doing the next season of The Red Road, and I'm working on another video game, which I can't mention, but it's going to be very exciting. And I just finished the Dexter CD. And that's about it. I mean, I'm sure there'll be other things, but that's enough for right now.